Hello everybody, my name is Jess, and thank you for coming to this session on presenting with Panache. If you're looking to supercharge your presentations from just sufficient to spellbinding, you're in the right place. Whether you're pitching a presentation to your colleagues in person, teaching lessons to students virtually, or just recording flipped content for asynchronous viewers, knowing how to captivate your audience is an art. And in this session, you're going to learn some tips and tricks on how to prepare and design, deliver, and interact and engage with your presentations and your people in your audience. So let's get started. Before we really officially kick off, just a little bit of information about me. My name is JLWilliams. I work for Manchester Public Schools in Connecticut, and I work at Illing Middle School as a tech integration specialist, and I also help out with the video production class. The link to this presentation is bit.ly/presentingwithjess. So if you want to see my slides and get to some of those links to steal some of my stuff, it's all yours now. We're friends. So just so you know, I've presented all over the country and the world as a Google certified innovator, trainer, and coach. I'm very much looking forward to working with you all today on this session. So before I get started, I would like to stop in and just check in with you. Whether you are presenting in person, virtually, live, asynchronously, it's always a really great idea to check in with your audience. Now, if we were in person, I usually do this the first 15 minutes before the presentation even starts. I have fun music playing. I will greet people at the door. I will start talking to people about what's in their coffee cups or what they did that weekend. With my students, I do the same thing. How was your day going so far? In a virtual or an asynchronous presentation like this, I might do a fun little choose your point of view kind of a thing. So which superpower would you want? If we were doing this over Zoom or Google Meet, I'd have you type your response in the chat and defend it. We would just have a little bit of fun. It's those opportunities to connect with the people, get a feel for where they are, what they do for work, what grade did they teach. It's important. Every minute you are with people as a presenter, they need to see you as a person. So I'm going to ask you to pick one of these. If it were me, I'm really into teleportation, I think, because flights have gotten really expensive. Speaking of superheroes, every superhero has a kryptonite, something that is their weakness, something that drives them nuts or makes them powerless. Now, if I had to pick my kryptonite, it would be, without a doubt, boring presentations, because I have a terrible attention span. And it's not like I have to be entertained the entire time, but there's a certain it factor when it comes to presenting. And we're going to be discussing that throughout this entire session. Now, this horrible kryptonite of mine, it not only applies to in-person presentations, but also when I'm attending virtual meetings or even when I'm reading emails. I mean, I know there's a lot of important information there, but that's a lot of words. Now, I felt bad about this kryptonite of mine for a very long time, but I think it all changed for me when I heard Dr. Chris Haskell from Boise State University speak at a conference. And he said this: as teachers and presenters, we are responsible for the program and the reception. Now, that really hit home with me because, of course, when you deliver information, you have to know your content, but you also need to be able to deliver that content in a way that engages your crowd, connects with them, and gets them thinking about your presentation after you're done presenting. The goals for today are simple. Obviously, we want to strengthen our presentation skills and command our audience's attention, whether that be in person or virtually. But I organized this session into 3 parts. Part 1 is about preparation and design. How are we preparing our material to best hit our crowd, our audience? The second section of this presentation is all about the delivery. Some tips and tricks on how you can captivate in the middle of your presentation, working with the crowd, how you can feel confident presenting to everybody. And finally, interacting and engaging with your audience as you are presenting. So, of course, we don't want to just present for 45 minutes straight without checking in with the crowd. That can be a real snooze fest. So I will teach you some ways that you can engage with your attendees as you are presenting your wonderful content. And whatever time we have left, I have some real showstoppers to show you. Here's some food for thought. Did you know that the average attention span for a goldfish is just 9 seconds? Now, back in 2000, the average human's attention span was 12 seconds. And in just 15 years, so in 2015, did you know the average attention span has shrunk to 8 seconds? I mean, that is bonkers. So when you are trying to get someone's attention in an email and the email looks like this, now, yeah, see the little snooze emoji. Yes. So while there might be a lot of important information in this email, chances are the receiver of that email isn't going to pay much attention to those details. Your connection with your audience starts even before you are presenting. So knowing how to compose an email that's going to capture the attention of a person or a goldfish is an absolute skill. Right off the bat, as I look at this email, there's a lot of text. There are really long URLs that I know I have to go to and click on, but there's nothing here that draws me to what the important information is. So what are some things that we can do in an email that we know we have to send some really important information, but we really want people to read it? This is an actual email I had to send out some coaches in my district this past spring. The first thing you're going to notice is that it's not very long. There's not a lot of text heavy paragraphs. What you will notice is that I utilized bullet points. Bullet points are a great way to keep things short and to deliver information that is pertinent. It actually draws your eyes there. The next thing you're going to notice is that I bolded an action item, something I really needed my participants to do. You will see that in the middle, there's that action item, and it says, fill out this doodle with your availability. I was trying to find a time for everybody to meet. Very simply, I just highlighted in my email with the light yellow, so it's not like burning my eyeballs out, just drawing people's attention there. I also even used some emojis, just one pop, two pops of an emoji. If this is an informal email, I have no problem using emojis, just to draw people's attention there. And finally, getting rid of very long URLs, the HTTPS, blah, 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 simply by highlighting the text in an email that you want to turn into a link, simply by highlighting it and hitting Control K or Command K if you're using a Mac on your keyboard, will very quickly allow you to change your long URL, get rid of that long URL, and change that text into a link so it looks a lot cleaner. Next thing I want to show you is another sample. This is an action item. We had some state testing coming up, and you'll see again, I didn't use so much bulleting here as I used that highlighting the action item. I hyperlinked, so I took out that long, nasty URL, but you're going to see that I also used a screenshot. A screenshot is a great way, instead of directing people through text, to show them exactly what you are talking about. Now, let's say someone is having an issue and I can't sit with them to resolve. I could take the time to write out very extensive step-by-step directions, but what about if I just did a screen recording? There are some amazing opportunities to record a screencast because guess what? Your students, your colleagues, many of them are visual learners. Recording a screencast cuts down on that unnecessary text in an email. And another thing is by recording these mini 30-second, 60-second videos, you're going to build a really great repository of recordings that you can share out in an instant so that you're constantly not rewriting directions to students and colleagues. Some of my favorite extensions for screencasting include Screencastify or Loom, that once you record it, it can turn into a link that you can pop into an email. Screencastify also saves directly to your Google Drive. And also, did you know that even iPads and most mobile devices have a recording tool baked right in, so you can record your screen and actually save that right to your mobile devices or your iPad's camera roll. It's extremely wonderful. And actually, I'm using another tool for this presentation, which I've never used before for screen recording, WeVideo. So if you're interested in learning more about WeVideo, I also am a WeVideo ambassador. Feel free to email me about it. And while we're on the topic of screen recording and screencasting, I just want to give you some best practices. So guess what? Shorter is better. Give up the Oscar. Nobody needs anything that's super long just for the sake of being long. Keep it short. 5 minutes is my max. I try to keep them short because keeping people's attention is tough. And you know what I find is that if I need to share videos with students or teachers that are longer than 5 minutes, I typically try to break them up into smaller chunks. So the first one is only 2 minutes, then the second one is 2.5 minutes, and the final one is a minute and a half. Chunking things makes them easier digesting for other people. If possible, use headphones with a mic because sound matters when you are recording. And obviously, recording from the quietest place possible. Sometimes that might be your bathroom. I know people have dogs and other animals that live in their home, or children even. So if you're recording in the office, just try to find the quietest place that you possibly can. Now, I wanted to go ahead since we only have about 45 minutes together. If you take a look at slide 18 on my resources, you're going to find a ton of Loom and Screencastify links that you can go to help you continue to be an amazing screencaster. And one day, somebody in your school district or someone you work with or a parent is going to say, wow, thank you for these amazingly short emails. And finally, just those best practices one more time. Keep it clear and concise, bullet as much as possible, get rid of those long URLs, highlight any key points, embed a screencast if you can, and here are the links to the ones that I mentioned. And finally, and even embedding a screenshot, like Awesome Screenshot. Oh, and I cannot forget, even putting an emoji in your subject line can be a really great way to stand out in somebody's inbox. My favorite Chrome extension to use is Joy Pixels, which I've linked into this slide number 21. Now, before we move on from prepare and design to the deliver, I need to emphasize the importance of preparing and designing a training or presentation. I cannot stress this enough. Prepare your visuals, whether those be slides, a doc, whatever you're working on to show people, take the time to prepare them. Here's an example of an agenda from a presentation that I give frequently. I am a huge fan of creating consistency and organization and pacing for the people that are going to be at my presentation or at my lesson. That clarity of an agenda or something as simple as having them go to a slide deck so that they know you are prepared can very much reduce anxiety. Now, a lot of things that happen when it comes time to prepare a presentation is people go, oh my gosh, but I'm not a designer. I cannot design it. And they use just a basic something from PowerPoint or from Google Slides. I'm here to tell you that there are 3 amazing websites that you can go to download free templates for your PowerPoint or for your Google Slides presentations. Slides Mania, Slides Go, and Slides Carnival are amazing. They are free, they are fabulous, and they can really help you keep that clarity and that help you keep consistency of your branding throughout an entire presentation. Some of those important reasons why I love Slides Go, Slides Carnival, Slides Mania is because it helps us avoid some of those common pitfalls that happens to presenters. Having too much text on a slide, having too many different types of fonts. We need to keep it simple. One of the best things I ever learned about when I was giving presentations is if you can have a blank slide or a slide that's completely black with no text on it in the middle of your presentation, what does that do? Why would I have a black slide in the middle of my presentation? Well, what that does is it draws everybody's attention back to you, puts you, the focus, back on the presenter. So don't be afraid to really keep it simple when you are working on those presentation slides and really put that emphasis on less is more. Now, sometimes you might be presenting and you have to demo something live. That requires you to have many tabs open and to alternate and switch from one screen to the next. Having multiple screens is definitely helpful, or having multiple windows in one screen is helpful. But if you are a Chrome user, one of my favorite tips to use is grouping your tabs ahead of time. Let's say I know I'm giving a presentation on WeVideo coming up. I have 3 tabs that I want to utilize. If you open up those tabs on your Chrome browser and right click on one of those tabs, you can group your tab into different particular presentation things. So again, I'm working on WeVideo. I want to make sure I have these tabs ready to go. Having your links ready ahead of time, it really minimizes the chances of something flubbing up or not working for you when it comes to a live presentation. So I highly recommend grouping tabs, having your tabs ready ahead of the time before you're presenting virtually or in person so that there's less of a fumbling and typing in of URLs when it's crunch time. Now that you've had your content prepared and designed, we are ready to talk about delivering that content. Now, whether that's in person or virtually, knowing how to capture an audience is an art. I've been presenting now since, I don't know, the past 7 or 8 years. And to this day, it still makes me incredibly nervous. There's so much pressure. And we all know, even if you're an expert on the content, being able to deliver it in a way that makes your audience care is huge. So I have to tell you, there are some tricks I've learned over the many, many hours of presenting. And every time I get nervous, I always think about my public speaking muse, William Shakespeare. Willie the Shake, as I call him. Here's how this obsession really started. Back in 2001, I read Macbeth for the first time. I was a junior in high school, and all I can think about in this time was how awesome this was. He went from witches to apparitions to prophecies, regicide. There was a drunk janitor. It was everything. It was amazing. And it wasn't until I was in college and I was actually studying who Shakespeare was that I realized all that he did. He was an actor, he was a playwright, he was a theater owner, a director, producer. And I think sometimes as teachers and presenters, we do put a lot of that pressure on ourselves. We are the researchers, the lesson designers, the curriculum, the data, the everything. And it can be very overwhelming. So here I am today. If you want to deliver powerful presentation, I have 3 important tips for you to remember. So, to put things in perspective, back in Shakespeare's time, which was like the 16th century, he didn't have crazy special effects like J.J. Abrams, and his Globe Theater didn't have switcher boards for audio or even microphones. And a lot of times, our fear of failure as presenters stems from our confidence. We often think to ourselves, what do I bring to the table? The most important thing that I learned from Shakespeare here is don't focus on what you don't have. Focus on what you bring to the table. So I actually did some research on this. And although you might not be feeling the most confident before a big presentation, research has proven that one way you can rewire or trick your brain into feeling more confident is by changing your body language. And this can be seen in the animal kingdom, right? Animals expand, they open up when they're taking up space, they feel confident. When they're feeling meek, they kind of shrink down. So the next time you have to give a big presentation and you feel that uneasiness in that gut, that what do I bring to the table? Trick your brain, rewire your brain. Try one of the following power moves, these power stances, to help you quell and combat your feelings of nervousness. The first one is the Wonder Woman, right? You stand with your hips and you put out your chest and you can feel like the sweat coming off of your hands and you're nervous to speak. And if you're going to remember anything, puff up your chest and just be ready to be Wonder Woman or Wonder Man or Superman. The other one is the take it or leave it, right? You place your hands on the table, take a deep breath, lean forward, and you are in control. Breathe. You know what you're doing. You know your content. And finally, the victor. Take up space. Make your arms wide. Trick your brain into thinking you are feeling confident and smile. Shake off this feeling of I'm nervous, I'm sweating, I'm looking through my notes. Stretch yourself out. Put your arms in that V and be the victor. Remember, don't focus on what you don't have. You have something of value to share with your students and with your audience. And if you're not feeling confident, fake it till you make it. Now, the second tip. is know your audience. The way that the Globe Theater was set up, standing room was saved for the groundlings. Those were the servants, the soldiers, the seamen, the poor artists, and it cost a penny to stand on the theater floor. And because it was an open air amphitheater, the groundlings were vulnerable to snow and rain. And if they didn't like how things were going, they would hurl fruit and vegetables at the players. And it kind of sounds like working at a middle school. And the richer folks, they would sit up higher in the reserve seating. So how did Shakespeare keep the attention of such a diverse crowd? Well, Shakespeare knew what would attract theater goers, the ghosts and the murders, but he also knew how to organize his content in a way that could make people spellbound. For example, those long speeches could be followed by the drunk janitor or a fighting scene. And from his director's chair, Shakespeare knew and he understood what could captivate that audience. And it was because he put his audience at the heart of all that he created that made him successful. It is so important to remember that as you present, you think about your audience and the stakeholders and your students when you deliver. How are you hooking them into the presentation? How long have they been sitting there? Are you just telling them facts or are you telling a story? Orchestrate your content so it matters to the listener. Now, finally, we have one last tip from Shakespeare to help you with your presenting. It's very important to have a few tricks up your sleeve. Shakespeare was known for having trap doors on his stage and duels and prose versus puns. He knew one tool wasn't going to do everything for him. He knew he had to switch it up to keep the audience's attention. Now, as you deliver presentations, did you realize that 85% of what the audience takes away is based on your mannerisms, your facial expressions? It's important to be expressive. And sometimes you might want to speak louder, and other times you might want to get serious and kind of draw back in to bring them back into you. Do not be afraid to be expressive. Now, I've done some research on this, and I believe that there are some really great speaking tricks and techniques that you're not going to have them mastered by your next presentation, but if you can practice and keep in your mind one or two, you can slowly embed them throughout your presentations moving forward. You can do this with some of these tricks and techniques. The first of all is posture. Remember your power pose, take up your space, have a broad stance, and avoid the fidgeting. I struggle with the fidgeting, but sometimes it's important to keep reminding yourself of that. The next thing is eye contact. Keep your head up. If you're presenting virtually, it's really important that you keep your eyes up at the camera and not down at your keyboard at your notes. Don't be creepy, meaning just smile when it's natural for you. Don't force the smile if it's uncomfortable for you. And scanning the room, if you're in person, try to make eye contact. Think about that person that's all the way in the back trying to pay attention to you. Now, as for gestures and movement, don't be afraid to use your hands. And, when you change a topic, don't be afraid to change your slide or change the stance that you're taking. Sometimes proximity matters too. I know that for working with students, sometimes just moving around the room and standing closer to a student or somebody in your audience might capture their attention. And finally, I can't stress this enough either, but just being authentic and genuine. Never forget one time I was watching a good friend James do a presentation, and I loved how sleek his slides were, and they were crisp and white and black and gray and just very professional. And I remember thinking to myself, I want my slides to look like that. And I started building and I started making my presentation, and then I looked and I was like, this isn't me. And I scrapped everything. You have to remember you cannot be anybody else when you present. So when you start talking, don't pretend that you're somebody else. Just take your voice that you naturally take. Make the slides that feel the most like you. And also try not to rush as much as you might be nervous. So remembering these verbal and nonverbal tricks are definitely going to help you. But I find, like I mentioned earlier, the most important thing to do is to give yourself time to practice. So I figured what better way to practice your speaking skills is than to play a game. So this is called the Would You Rather game. And You might think it's a little silly, but would you believe it or not, practicing speaking and practicing posture and tone and inflection, those are all a skill. So here's how we can play this game together today, even asynchronously. First, I'm going to display a this or that question. For example, would you rather only eat your favorite meal for the rest of your life or never eat your favorite meal ever again? So after 10 seconds of think time, you, the person/player, will articulate a 30-second response to the group, pretending it's us sitting with you in your room today. And you will use your best posture, eye contact, gestures, movement, tone, and expression. So, are you ready to play? Let me demo number 1 for you. Question number 1, I'll take. Would you rather be a naturally talented dancer or a naturally talented singer? I'm going to take 10 seconds to think about it. Okay, I think I'm ready. I believe that I would prefer to be a naturally talented singer. I'm a huge fan of going to live concerts. There's something to be said about grabbing a microphone and being able to sing and create music. I do love dancing, don't get me wrong, but as I get older, I'm not as nimble as I once was in the day. So if I had the ability to travel the world with my voice and wow people at parties and record video messages, I believe that being a naturally talented singer would be my choice. I found myself still practicing my posture. I found myself having to pull back at certain times, but it is difficult to speak about something for 30 seconds, and it's a skill I practice to this day. So let's try question number 2. Get ready, because you're going to try this one. Question number 2 is, would you rather never have another coffee drink again or never have another dessert again? So I'll give you 10 seconds of think time. Think about what would be the pros and cons of giving up coffee or a dessert. And I want you to practice speaking to your computer like you are in the middle of a presentation, and practice that posture, eye contact, gestures, movement, and tone and expression. And you can pause here. How did you do? What did you pick? Just curious. Let's try question number 3. Would you rather travel the world for a year on a tight budget or stay in one country for a year in luxury? I think I know the answer to this one. #Illy. Again, 10 seconds of think time. Go ahead and pause when you're ready, and I want you to practice your eye contact specifically for this question. Are you getting the hang of it yet? Let's try question number 4. Would you rather give up bathing for a month or give up the internet for a month? This is really tough. For this particular question, take a few minutes to think about it, but then try to work on tone and expression for this one. Why should I believe you? Maybe tell me an anecdote to go along with this. When you're ready, pause and give yourself a 30-second timer. With question number 5. For this one, really try to work on your gestures and movement. Would you rather be able to breathe underwater or be able to fly? This one's tough too. When you're ready, go ahead and pause and practice for 30 seconds. I really wish I could be meeting you in person right now to give you some really great feedback. I know you're doing well, and this is incredibly awkward, but let's finish with this last question and try to put together all these different techniques, the posture, eye contact, gestures. Let's try them all for this final one. Here's your last question for real this time. Would you rather go into the past and meet your ancestors or go into the future and meet your great-great-grandchildren? This one you might need more than 10 seconds to think about. If you feel the need to write a post-it just to bullet some ideas for yourself, don't be afraid to do that. And if this whole particular section has been like, oh, I'm not really good at practicing this, these are all really great questions that you can use at the beginning of a presentation to kind of talk to your audience or to your students. So for this one, give yourself a 30-second timer. Go ahead and pause this presentation and try to use all of those techniques in this last question. Good luck. Great job. I'm so proud of you for trying that activity. Just remember, being a good presenter and being able to deliver content really just comes down to faking being confident when you're nervous, keeping your user in mind, or really your audience in mind, and not being afraid to switch up those tricks. And I cannot stress this enough: practice, practice, practice. And just some extra tips if you find yourself being somebody post pandemic that is presenting virtually a lot. I do have some tips specifically for asynchronous and virtual delivery. First and foremost, notice your surroundings. If you look behind me, there's a gray wall. If there was a lot of clutter behind me, or if you could even see into my bedroom or my bathroom, that might be a distraction for people. If at all possible, try to have a very blank background. And if you can't, try to use one of the virtual backgrounds that Zoom or Google Meet provides for you. It can really help you kind of eliminate those distractions that might be happening as people are looking over your shoulder, like, what's on that guy's bookshelf? Another thing that might be helpful is lighting. A ring light can help, and they run about 20 to 30 bucks online. But if there's a window behind you, it will be difficult for people to see your face. So try to have natural light behind your computer, and that way you look golden and delicious to look at. Another thing we might want to worry about is audio. Are you in a busy place? Are you in a loud, echoey room? Decide for yourself whether headphones work for you or not. And then, like I mentioned before, background distractions have gotten so popular that actually on Twitter, there is an account called Room Rater. And if you take a look, what Room Rater does is it takes screenshots of people that are being interviewed remotely, and it rates their background, like how well they position their camera, how light or dark it is in their room, what kind of distractions are around you. So don't be afraid to get rid of some distractions, but also play them to your advantage. For example, if I were presenting in front of students right now, I might want to show them my Funko Pop of Sophia from the Golden Girls as a conversation starter. Know how to play those distractions to your benefit. Another thing while presenting is do not be afraid to show your face. Whenever you're recording asynchronous content, I always try to make sure my mug is somewhere visible. Students really appreciate when they can see your face. Your colleagues like to know that you are there, not just your voice. Don't be afraid to show your face. It really adds an extra panache to everything. Sometimes using a custom cursor is a great trick to get people to follow along as you're demoing things on a website. If you go to custom cursor, there's an extension where you can turn your cursor into a hot dog or a smiley face. And it's just a kitschy little thing that might just be something to help you if you have young learners that are following you, or just you want to throw a curveball at your audience. And like I mentioned earlier, practicing, having links ready, and using a second monitor can be very, very helpful. Now, as we move on to the final section of this presentation, I want to talk to you about the importance of what it means to engage and interact. Like, it is so difficult to find time to work our curriculum in and connect with students and colleagues if you are delivering professional development. But I just wanted to let you guys know there was a preliminary study that was released from MIT back in March of 2020, and the report concluded that the need to connect is as fundamental as our need to eat. And over the course of the pandemic, people were actually starved for contact. And it suggests that that chronic social isolation might be something like a long time undernourishment. Now, this loneliness can actually impede a person's ability to learn and retain info. And we can't deny what our students and our colleagues have gone through in the last few months through the pandemic. So I'm not a psychologist, but I know that in order for students and adults to want to learn, needs have to be met. And Google Workspace for Education and other technology tools can really foster teacher to student and student to student connection and colleague to colleague connections by cultivating an environment of psychological safety. Now, I want to provide you some tips today that might actually be helpful for you when you want to engage and connect with your colleagues, but most importantly, students. One way to do this is to just start your presentation with a fun question. And these questions are not always just for the first week of school. They can be done every time you meet synchronously, or it can be done when you're recording content. Throwing a little Easter egg into one of your screencasts can be something that your students look forward to. Quickly, just dropping these into a Google Meet chat or the Zoom chat, or even running a Google Meet poll can really be helpful to get your students and your attendees interested in what you've got going on for the day. Another thing is that there are endless resources out there for checking in with students and colleagues and different people you present for. What I've done here on slide 67 is provided you a multitude of digital and journal prompts. If you just go ahead to slide 67 and click on these, you'll have the mood meter, which you can copy and paste and put into a slides presentation. You can do the virtual check-ins, the digital journaling. All of these are resources for you so you don't have to go digging. Another thing that might be helpful for you to utilize, and this can be done at the beginning of a presentation or somewhere in the middle when you feel like your audience's attention might be waning, is to throw them a link to a Google form. My good friend Mari, she does a bunch of these just by quickly checking in with her students. This is kind of what she does every day with them in class, but I find that these are a great way to connect with your audience. So I would love for you to try this out right now. Why don't you all go into a new tab and type in bit.ly/say hey to Jess. And here is an example of a Google form that I've used with teachers that I've coached. I ask them just fun questions to get to know them. And this is a great way to break up a session. I am a big fan of taking a break and walking away from your computer after 30 minutes. So we're at that mark right about now. So I'm going to have you fill out this form, hit pause on this video, and why don't you go get a stretch and maybe take a sip of coffee or water or a mimosa? I'm not telling. So why don't you try that right now, and we'll meet back here in about 3 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you all got a great drink. Just so you know, on slide 70 of this presentation, I put a huge list of resources all about Google Forms if you're interested in learning more about them. So for this next portion of the presentation, because our time together is dwindling, I want to just share with you a few more resources that are really great for interacting with and engaging with your audience when you're presenting. I'm not getting into how to use all of them per se, step by step, but if you're looking for resources on them, feel free to reach out to me and I can demo that for you. One of my favorite ways to interact with an audience is through Padlet. Padlet is like a giant bulletin board. You and your students can basically post a link to something that they found, or resources, or photos and work samples. One thing I would love for you to try right now is to open up a new tab and go to bit.ly/JessPadlet. So when you get to my Padlet, just go to the bottom right-hand corner where the plus sign is, and you can add something unique, odd, or interesting from your room or space. So I'm going to just say, hi, it's Jess, and I can upload something, share a link. I'll just use my camera really quickly and take a look at my delicious seltzer. 3, 2, 1. I hit save, and now I've added to the Padlet. And there's all different types of Padlets you can make. You can make a shelf to organize different types of resources you need students or teachers to see. You can create maps, and you can even display student work. So Padlet is a great, quick, and easy way that people can participate in your presentation. Another great tool for presentations, if you are a Chrome user, if you are a Google Slides user, is Pear Deck. And Pear Deck can basically be used on a Google Slides presentation you've already created or on a presentation that you are currently working on. And all it does is gives students and participants a voice. It's a great way to do SEL check-ins. One thing I really love about Pear Deck is once you add it to Google Slides, they have created templates for you, like the one you're viewing right now on the stress check. Great way to start a class, Great way to sprinkle some engagement and formative assessments throughout your presentations. And what I really love also about Pear Deck is that it can be done synchronously with an instructor-paced Pear Deck or asynchronously so the students can complete it for homework. Now, one other tool you could use is a great tool, newer to the Google Workspace for Education, is a Jamboard. And it really does encourage active learning. So think about this. You're in the middle of a presentation. You want people to vote and manipulate things. Share a Jamboard directly to your students by dropping the link to the Jamboard into the Google Meet, your Zoom, whatever. And the students can manipulate things. For example, join me on my Jamboard, bit.ly/JessJam21. Hopefully you took a minute to participate in my Jamboard. If you go to the Canva link that I've put onto slide 82, you will see that they have some Jamboard/whiteboard templates that you can use as GIF backgrounds on your Google Jamboard. I use this frequently. What I really loved is at my most recent meeting with my coaches, I downloaded a Canva background as a GIF and put it onto my Jamboard. And what I did to start my session with everyone is I said, hey, which emoji are you feeling today? And they dropped in the chat and we had a good conversation. So again, go to Canva. The education version of Canva is free for educators. So go check out Canva and log in with your school account. We have finally discussed it. We've come to the end of our journey. We've talked about preparation and design, how to deliver crush-worthy content, and how to engage and interact with your audience. But wait, there's more. I have one final tip to show you in this session, and that is something that has blown me out of the water when it comes to presenting. Introducing helps you perform, present, and entertain on video. It works synchronously with Google Meet, Zoom, and many other video products, or you can just record yourself as an amazing asynchronous resource. The one thing about is that you do have to download it to your computer, so it won't work on a Chromebook. But why don't you meet me over there right now? Welcome to kind of looks ordinary, but what it produces is something incredible. The first thing you should notice is you are in a particular room. Right now, I have a room with waves behind me. So if I was presenting synchronously over Google Meet or Zoom, I could choose as my camera. And there are so many different virtual rooms to choose from. So I could go from tiers. I can have different color backgrounds that go with different personality types. And you can always add your own background if there's one that you want. For example, if I wanted my Changemaker background, I could add that one for me. Ta-da! Once I have the background that I like, I can start adding my content. So if you take a look at the bottom of the screen, I have an option to add text, like a text box. So I can say, welcome, and hit done. And it will show up over my shoulder, kind of like a newscast. And I can move myself from left to right so that I'm not taking up so much space. What I absolutely love too is if I want to give a different effect, I can turn my slides off for certain times. I can have it over my shoulder, or I can even make it full. And oh, did you happen to notice in the top right-hand corner next to the rooms, there is a presenter button. So not only can you change the room that you're in or the background, you can also change what you as the presenter look like. So right now you can see I'm kind of covering my text, but wouldn't you know, I can shrink myself down, or I can make myself transparent or a ghost, or I can give myself some different backgrounds to make things kind of interesting. So let's say I'm trying to present something and capture somebody's attention. Maybe one of my slides in has a special effect. Now, not only can you add text, but you can add a GIF. So let's say I really love this heart emoji. I can throw that in to say how much I love presenting to you all today. Now, one thing I've learned as working with and you'll see in my presentation that I've included an entire presentation I did for the National Junior Honor Society using is that I don't necessarily need to create a Google Slides presentation or a PowerPoint in order to use very frequently, what I'll do is just create a very rudimentary presentation right in and then I will get ready to record. And when I'm ready to record, I just hit record to file and it gives me an MP4 at the end. Most up-to-date tutorials on make sure to check out the link to their YouTube page. I just wanted to say thank you so much for learning with me today as I discussed with you ways to prepare and design, deliver, and engage and interact during presentations. Now, if we were in person or if we were even synchronously live, I would finish with some type of culminating activity, either a waterfall activity, which you can read about here, or a head, heart, and feet share out. So I encourage you, even as you are leaving, to make sure that you are connecting, circling back with your attendees, getting their feedback before you leave the room. And as always, we are friends now, so please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know if you have any questions or if you need any assistance as you learn to present with Panache. Thank you so much.